All right. We got some time this afternoon, so we're going to film another Party Time Talk. Party Time Talk 4 is going to be in regards to more of the injury prevention kind of wellness of athletes, but talking about the importance of load management for athletes. So we see people all the time here, right? And I think it's more the culture of sports now where athletes have upwards of 5 different coaches doing different things with them. You've got strength coaches, speed and agility coaches, skills coaches, their school ball coaches, their competitive ball coaches, and all other sorts of things that people apparently feel like they need coaching for. And a lot of times our athletes are training multiple times a day, sometimes 7 days a week. And some people can handle that, but I would argue that most people can't. And in the long run, it ends up being more detrimental. So when it comes to just taking care of your body, managing injury prevention, overall wellness for the athlete, what are things that athletes need to be mindful of when it comes to load management, what they're doing each week?
Everything counts. Absolutely everything counts. It's not just about, well, I only lifted 3 days this week. Okay, fine. You lifted 3 times this week. How many days did you have practice? How many days did you have games? Did you play in those games? Are you doing additional work with speed coach, hitting coach, pitching coach? Right now we're seeing it a ton with some of our baseball kids where they are just so overloaded that their bodies can't handle it anymore. Let's take the example of, what do we want to call this patient? We'll say Billy. Billy seems like a good nickname. Okay. We're going to take Billy, for example. Now, Billy has arguably one of the best work ethics we have ever seen. I mean, you are
like dedicated,
just absolutely will outwork everybody who gets in his way. So Billy worked really hard all off season. The throwing programs, hitting, individual lessons, speed work, ton of strength work. One of his biggest hurdles over the winters, he wanted to put on some mass and some weight. And he could not, no matter how much we tweaked his nutrition, no matter how many supplements he took, no matter what he did, the weight would not go on. As baseball season started, Billy continued to lift 4 to 5 days a week, getting up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, going lifting before school, then going to school all day, then going to practice, then going and doing some extra yoga stuff and sometimes extra hitting or throwing things after practice. And we finally had the conversation a couple weeks ago with Billy that you are, and it's not that we finally had the conversation a couple weeks ago. We've had the conversation probably 25 times at this point, but Billy's mom came to an appointment with him. And sometimes that can be very helpful to get a point across. And we talked about load and load management and that Billy was overloaded. So I asked him, let's take a week of not going to lift every day in the morning before school. Let's just chill on that and see what happens. Billy's throwing velocity went up. Billy, in the last 2 weeks, has put on 12 pounds of muscle. He feels recovered. Grades are better. Not falling asleep in class. his performance at the plate is better. Everything, according to Billy, is better. And that is, I attribute that to he's actually getting some recovery time. Now, we have to stress the system to get growth, but we also have to rest the system so that all of the stress can work itself out. That's how you get all the positive gains. And we have seen more and more lately kids who are just completely overloaded. Whether that's high stress, some of the things that we're doing now is measuring autonomic nervous system function via the HRV, which heart rate variability. That's a really good biomarker, an indicator of overall health and recovery of your autonomic nervous system, which controls the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest. And by monitoring that, we're able to tell, hey, you probably need to pull back a little bit. There are some wearable devices that some folks are wearing, so we can monitor them. But this is not a new issue for us. And I mean, we had a couple last fall that we see for more trying to do the injury prevention stuff with them. But they work out with, all the hitting coaches throwing, speed and agility, strength, all that stuff outside. And we had a couple that ended up hospitalized with some very serious issues because they were overloaded. And it didn't matter how many times we said, hey, you're overloaded, you need to pull back. The other coaches were telling them more. One of the things that our good mentor and friend, Mitch Hausholt, and many others have said recently is there needs to be one person managing load. And ideally, that person has the medical background and the performance and strength background to know where the balance is.
I think they also need to have the ability to objectively measure some of that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you have to have objective measurements. And, all these strength metrics are somewhat, I suppose, a badge of honor, but there are some that just get such high praise for all the extra work and the mass and stuff that they put on, but at what point does that take a detrimental toll? We've got 4 others right now who do similar training things in the off season, and I have been warning for months of, hey, if we don't make some changes here, you're going to end up with this list of things potentially injured. And lo and behold, 4 of those all have a hamstring issue right now. And these are things that are completely preventable. But because of the training and load and lack of load management, they have now ended up with injuries and had to take some games off. And while we can manage those things, we would much rather try to address the function on the front side and manage load to not have them in here injured. Like we talked about in the last party time talk, we will titrate whatever the visit needs are based on that day. And we try to stay on top of things before they become a problem, but some of them would just rather come see us when there's a problem, and which is fine. We're happy to do that too. But wouldn't it be nice to put in a little bit more consistency on the front end to not miss time and have issues down the road.
Yeah, for sure.
Did I get off topic?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
What's the topic? What are we talking about? Oh, load management. Yes. So I think the big keys to load management, objective ways to measure. And there's really good objectivity there. Some use force plate data and routine jump test scores to look at the algorithms on power production, deceleration, and monitor load and training volume that way. Some use heart rate variability. Some use, there's some other central nervous system monitoring tools with EEG and a few other things. You can monitor cardiac load and stressors. There are blood tests that can monitor stress levels, cortisol levels, norepi, just different blood markers. And from the metabolics, we can monitor sleep. Sleep is imperative to recovery. I think we certainly saw it in the heart of COVID, where all of a sudden this monitoring of things became more normal. I mean, you walked into a building, they take your temperature. Did that really catch much? Who knows? But we were measuring. Or using checklists for symptoms of, do you have a fever? Do you feel sick? Do you have a cough? All the different things that we saw with COVID. And all of a sudden, now that we're kind of on the back end of that, we've seen resistance again to that objective monitoring. And it's not that we're trying to use it from the standpoint of holding people out. We're trying to use it in a way to keep people participating. Mm-hmm. And so, whereas we had the mindset of, I'm going to use this as a gatekeeper to keep people out, we're trying to use it more of the, let's keep you going, rather than stop, play, participation, all the things. So it's really just a mindset shift on the objectivity of biometric monitoring for load management. We want to keep people going. We don't want to ever have to say things like to Billy of, hey, I need you to not go lift or do these extra things for a couple weeks just so that your body doesn't explode. We don't like having those conversations. We would rather say, hey, let's just pull it back to 2 days a week, monitor, when are you starting? How many games are you hitting in? What's your practice load? What's all of the things, and look at the whole picture and say, hey, your system is handling this really well. Maybe we can push it a little more. Or your system's not handling it well. Let's pull back a little bit, and not having to have almost a knockdown, drag out fight with the Billies of the world to say, hey, you're something is going to blow up. Oh, by the way, the chronic arm pain that he had is also pretty much gone because, well, he's recovered and his body can now control those physics of throwing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, just thinking of things in moderation, because like you said, we don't want to have to tell kids to stop doing certain things altogether. But it's like with anything, moderation is key. So like lifting in season, that's awesome. Like you should do that if you want to keep your gains and stay strong and keep away injuries. There's tons of things that you still need to keep up on doing. It just it's all about how often you do that. Like lifting twice a week at, maybe one day it's a heavy load, the other day it's a lighter load, is going to be way better than just lifting heavy 5 days a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then one thing too that I think we all have to think about, because we mentioned all these coaches that are involved, like all of us as coaches, athletic trainers, whatever we are, need to understand that it is important to see how these kids are doing. So if I'm a strength coach and a kid walks into my weight room and they sound awful, like they've got a sinus infection or they look ultra tired or whatever, and they've already trained however many days a week, like the last thing you should do is be like, well, I don't care how you feel, get under the bar, we're going to lift, And some kids will do it anyways just because they're hard workers and they don't want to let you down, right? Sure. But then also there are some kids that come here that are like, yeah, I want to hit a BFR workout. And you look at them and you're like, you don't look right, or you don't look so good, or you are sick this week. Like we probably shouldn't do that, because if we do, it's going to overstress your system and you're going to end up getting sick or having to miss time or whatever. So I think everyone involved needs to be okay with just checking in on their athletes consistently, and then being okay changing things up based off of how they feel. Because, I like putting kids through workouts. I like doing BFR. Sure. But if that's not the best thing for them, well, then guess what? We're going to adjust you, do some needling, throw you on the Normatex, brain tap, whatever it is, to give you whatever you need. Like, we're not going to be those people that are like, well, you really do need BFR so you can keep stacking on gains and get bigger muscles and all this stuff. Like, if they can't handle it, we're not going to do it.
Sure. And maybe that just means if we want to keep the metabolics of BFR going, maybe we do an IPC
Use a different protocol.
Because there's a whole bunch of different applications for it. It's knowing and understanding all of those different things. And I also want to be very clear that when we talk load, we're not just talking how much weight is on the bar and how many times you're under the bar a week. It is, I've had kids come in that they've had a test in at least one subject in school every day that week.
Yeah, it's like neurological load, physical load, emotional load. Like, how many kids come in here issues with girlfriend or boyfriend that stress them out?
Yeah.
If you work with high school athletes, you know what we're talking about.
I mean, and we had one recently that knew he had really screwed up in a relationship that went diving off of the table when he saw an ex because he did not handle things well. So, like, what does then that do to his load in his neurologic emotional load in that treatment session to help make him better? So it's total load, and then how much. Basically, think of it like an energy bank. How much are you depositing in the bank account versus how much are you withdrawing from the bank account? And we are seeing more and more kids that are overdrafting their energy bank account. And just like none of us would want to do that with our actual bank account, we need to do that with our energy bank account as well. So there's a lot of different aspects to load management, and again, I firmly believe there needs to be one person monitoring that load, and all the big systems have someone who does that. Typically at the collegiate level, it's a strength coach. Sometimes it's actually, I would say even more often than not anymore, it's the athletic training staff knowing what the practice load is, what the strength conditioning, the lifting load is, and that athletic trainer meets with all of the different people and helps monitor that.
Well, and even
it's injury prevention.
Even in professional sports settings, like I'm a big soccer guy. Like soccer teams, the big clubs, they literally have like a sports physiologist that tracks all of the data of the distances they've run, the speed they've run, whether that be in practice, in a game, monitor their nutrition. I mean, this person's sole job is to help manage load, and then they in turn communicate with the physios on staff, the strength coaches, the skill coaches, the head coach. But that's how important it is, and that's why the pro teams do it. They're at the top of their game, and the reason why they can stay at the top of their game is because they pay attention to load management.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they played all of their players twice a week, the same starting 11 on a soccer field, by the second month of the season, they would be doing horrible because our bodies would be so run down they wouldn't be able to perform the way they need to.
Sure. And I think, we see a lot of high school and college kids whose dream is to play at the next level, whatever the next level might be. And, you look at the example of like the Little League World Series, and very few of those Little League superstars make it to a level beyond high school in that sport. So there are a few here and there, but a lot of times their systems are so burnt out and they get plagued with injury by the time they get to high school that they're done. So the more focus and attention to detail we have now when you're developing as an athlete, the better your chance of longevity in that sport. And I'm not just saying your organized sport, because at some point you're done playing the sport competitively that you want to do. At some point you're no longer a formal team athlete. There's so many things for lifelong sport and activity. Maybe you're done with baseball and football and basketball in high school, and you want to get into triathlete or
do triathlons.
Yeah, do triathlons in college, or maybe you just want to run. Maybe you just want to lift hard and heavy at the gym. Fine, whatever. Maybe it's intramurals in college instead of an organized team sport. Maybe it's adult league hockey or adult league softball or soccer down the road. I mean, I think you play in a or have played in an indoor soccer league.
Yeah.
There's so many different avenues and things you can do, as long as your system isn't so broken now that you can't do those things. So that's what we're trying to do is help teach you load management and work through those things to keep people going. We don't want anybody to have to take a ton of time off for problems.
Yeah, we're trying to educate people and give them the tools they need and the mindset they need to be able to do as much as they want for as long as they want.
Yep. I would argue that load management is the base of the pyramid for injury prevention.
Mm.
And then it goes up from skill and neurological movement, coordination, everything from there. But load management has to be the base of the pyramid.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yep. Yeah.
So,
you can't pour from an empty cup. If your system's constantly fried, then there's only so much you can do and so many gains you can make up.
Sure. We can do all the corrective exercises in the world, but if your system is so fried, that
you can follow the nutrition plan to a T.
Yeah.
You can do all the things, but if you're not managing load right, then you're probably going to be stagnant.
Yep. Load management's where it's at.
Yep.
Sweet.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, guys.